connecting. Oh, let me turn this volume down.
I'm gonna turn my cell phone off for a minute.
Yeah, all phones on silent. And Reverend Trina, you are live.
Welcome to Church Biz. I am your host, Reverend Patrina White McClure. We are in for a great show on today. You can already see who our first guest is, the Judge Melynee Leftridge Harris. We'll be talking with her as she shares with us her political campaign for the upcoming runoff election for judge for Fulton County Superior Court. We also are flanked by the Miss Damita Chatman. If you were into politics, you need to know this woman here because she is representing Citizens for Excellence in Elected Leaders, the go-to person if you want to get in the office. All right, we are representing WCEG Network here at www.wcegtalkradio.com, and you can refer to this show as often as you like. Just go right there. And Judge Harris, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Reverend Trina.
Oh, thank you for being a part of the show today. And as well, good morning, Miss Chatman.
Good morning.
I know that you already have your Power Pack questions on fire. Judge Harris, will you go ahead and tell us about yourself?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be on this show, Reverend Trina and Reverend Penny and Miss Chatman. I am delighted to be here, excited to be here. My name is Melynee Leftridge Harris, and I'm running for the open judicial seat on the Fulton County Superior Court bench. And as you stated, I'm in a runoff election on August 11th. Early voting does start July 20th for that seat. By way of some background, as far as my experience is concerned, I've been a Fulton County Magistrate Court judge full-time for the last 10 years. The last 5 of those years, I've actually been sitting as a Fulton County Superior Court judge, hearing a number of their cases. I've actually been doing a part of their job by designation, and I've enjoyed it a great deal. What's interesting too also about this time of service on the bench is that as a magistrate court judge, we're known as the People's Court. So I've gotten an opportunity over the last 10 years to engage with people who come into court, kind of like, much of it is kind of like Judge Judy's show. You see the average citizen coming in with a variety of problems, and we have a variety of calendars. And so interfacing with the public is something that I enjoy, serving in that way. Personally, I want you to know that I've lived in South Fulton County for about 25 years. So I'm really invested in our communities. I went to Spelman College in the 80s. I just gave away my age, but some time ago, Spelman College. And I'm a wife, I'm a mother of 2 young adults, and I'm a member of St. Paul's Episcopal Church. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and Chums are 2 civic organizations that I'm involved in.
Awesome, awesome. Now, what made you want to become a judge in the first place?
Quite simply and basically, I believe that people deserve a fair shot when they come to court. And that a fair shot really started, Reverend Patrina, back when I was in law school. I went to Georgetown University Law School in Washington, D.C. And my 3rd year of law school, I practiced under this act that allows law school students to put on the big pants and be lawyers. And I represented a woman who had been the victim of a domestic assault by her husband. We went up to court and we stood up before the judge and presented the case because we were trying to get a temporary restraining order to stop him from coming into contact with her. The judge began to scream at her. He yelled at her, he berated her, and he made her feel this big. She was already feeling small. She had black eyes, busted lip, and she's out here in court. And he commenced to yell at her. And I thought to myself at the time, Reverend Patrina, people deserve better when they come to court. The judge is a public servant. And it's an adversarial process. It's a fight usually in court between two sides. And the judge's job is not to make that experience worse for people, but to make it better. People deserve a fair shot. And so that turned me to wanting to become a judge. And I've learned since being a judge that the idea of getting a fair shot is so much more important, particularly now than it has ever been. There is a lot of, there's a lack of trust that a lot of members of the public have of government and government officials. And there is, and it's been sustaining, but it's heightened now. And to be able to offer what I've been offering, which is an opportunity for a fair shot when people come into court, is of paramount importance.
Okay.
And
And
one answer to a short question, but you know.
well, it captured a lot, so that's a good thing. It paints a better picture for the rest of us talking with you, as well as getting an insight into who you are and how you came to be Judge Harris today. Can you explain to us what is restorative justice?
Restorative justice is a concept whereby what we're doing is rehabilitating the offender, all right? Finding ways to take a person who may have committed a crime and facilitate or help their re-entry out of that situation back into making good judgments. And we want to do that in such a way that we don't harm that person. In other words, we often see that terminology when we're talking about young people who have come to court and they maybe have no criminal history and they come and they've made a mistake. What we don't want to do is put them in a position where we have a conviction on their record that keeps them from applying to colleges, getting a degree, getting a good job. We failed them before they've gotten a chance to get off the runway and fly. And so restorative justice concepts allow for judges to say, you know what? I have a person in front of me that we can restore. This is a mistake, and let's work to find programs and other wraparound services to get this person off and flying in the right direction. I also want to add before I get off this question, Reverend Patrina, that a lot of what we see in court are people who are suffering from mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and homelessness. And those underlying issues really do have effect on the choices people make in the criminal realm. And so we have to take into account those underlying root issues in deciding what is an appropriate and just result for somebody that's coming into court on a criminal matter.
Therefore, you rely heavily upon those who have to take that individual from the moment of arrest through whatever analysis or evaluation processes. You're relying on their judgments in order for you to help make a sound decision. Is that correct?
Yes and no. When we're talking about the folks that are out, the officers that are out making the arrest, they are getting warrants for those arrests from a magistrate and doing it on this EWI system. So that's a stage and a step in the process. But by the time it sort of gets to the point where there's a decision to be made by a judge on the bench, you've got more information. You've got the person's criminal history. They're usually with a public defender or a private lawyer who has some more information about the person to share. You've got the prosecutor present at that point who has their information to share. And you've also got whoever came from the community, a mother, a father, family, boss, teachers, who also have more to add. So by the time it gets to the bench, you have so many more variables to consider than just what they have at the beginning of the process.
Awesome, awesome. Because I know it's very confusing. Usually the family is on the confused end of everything. And but the judge has to come in with a more trained eye, if you will, on how to make the proper determination regarding sentencing and all of that. So how do you separate your emotion in these processes in order to come to the right decision?
That's a great question. We are constrained by oath to follow the law and to apply that law to the facts as we see them to be. But at the same time, to your point, we are all human beings with feelings, with emotions, with backgrounds, with personal experiences. We are constrained to not allow our personal experiences to interfere with our judgment, but at the same time, we have to utilize all of our common sense and our life experience in being able to separate what is truth and what is not to the best of our ability. So there is a benefit to being a human being on the bench and feeling and having emotions. How you capture those emotions so that you remain fair and just will separate a good judge from a judge that maybe is struggling with that as a concept. Do we need to debrief with ourselves when we get off the bench? Drink a little water.
Yes, ma'am.
Breathe, step off for a minute, take 5 before we come back and clear your head. Yes, absolutely. But we stay focused on the dictates of the job and do it the best that we can every single day for every single person in every single case. I think most judges try very hard to do that. I certainly do.
And that's good to hear when it comes to voting time. I also do jail ministry on behalf of my church. I go to Mount Ephraim Baptist Church, and I get to see a lot of the people that are incarcerated, and a lot of them are on their way to doing some serious time. But then there are those who are in the system waiting for their initial trial date, or hearing, if you will, and they're hoping to get out and be released, and then I find that a lot of those people just don't have a lot of basic skills of making good decisions, and a lot of it goes to how they were raised. I have since come to the belief that a part of parental responsibility is teaching our children how to respond under pressure, how to think in the hard time. And I know that your judgment in determining who's going to have a higher recidivism rate will determine who's going to end up going into the restorative justice programs as opposed to those who are not good candidates. So I kind of clustered a lot there, but.
Well, you did, but you said it all so right. The big part of being a judge is discernment. Being able to decide who we're mad at versus who we're afraid of and what should happen. And that's exactly what you said, Reverend. If you have enough life experience and if you have enough time in the field of being a lawyer, being a judge, and you are a people person, you interact with and talk to people, then it puts you in the best position to be able to determine whether or not this is someone in front of me right now who has had a couple of hiccups as a result of the lack of structure, lack of finishing high school, whatever the situation is that they have lived through. Is this a person with the right amount of wraparound services or pulling in a mentor from the outside to see if we can move this train in the right direction, that we can save, that we can rehabilitate? Or is this a person who is such a danger to the community based on their past history and what's in front of me, the judge, that day, that the benefit sort of in giving this person yet another chance is diminishing, and the public safety issue is of more importance given all of those variables? So yes.
Wow. And what is it for you to be outside of the bench area? Miss Chatman, I haven't forgotten about you.
Oh, don't worry about it. I'm loving her.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So what is it like when you're not at work as you digress from all those stressors, because that's what they actually are, trying to determine somebody's future in just a few minutes sometimes? How do you detox from that?
I move into what I do that I like to do off the bench. I'm going to tell you that I love being on the bench.
All right.
Love my job. It is an awesome and humbling responsibility to serve the public in that way. So when I leave the bench, I love that I've had the opportunity to make some very important decisions about what should happen in a variety of cases. So, but it is a responsibility that you do need to have something else to decompress from. So to your question, if I was not campaigning right now, Reverend McClure, I would be out in my boot camp, my exercise boot camp. I do it about 4 or 5 months in the summer, weight vest on, dumbbells in hand, out in the grass, and we're getting it. I'm one of the older people in the group, but I'm hanging in there, and I'm gonna keep on doing it till the wheels fall off, okay?
Okay.
I like to serve. I like very much to serve on the board of directors of CCI, which is Covenant Community Incorporated. It's a ministry of All Saints Episcopal Church, and it's a residential life stabilization program for men who are experiencing homelessness and substance abuse issues. And they do really, really good work. And I love being a part of that particular board. I've also served 2 terms on Southside Medical Center's board, which is a medical facility that serves the underserved. And so I like to give back to the community in that way. I also like, this is on the bench, not off the bench, when the children come in, to see the judge in our version of the Scared Straight program, they will routinely bring them to my courtroom. And I love talking with them individually before they go off to see what's happening at the jail, part 2 of their trip. And I also like, I'm partial to senior citizens and young people. And I believe that senior citizens don't have a good idea of the resources available to them in court. And I like to go speak with them so they're not afraid to use the resources, particularly of magistrate court. So I like to go and talk with them freely about those things. And I have put together over the last couple of years, along with some other group members in my CHUMS organization, 5 panel discussions for children, Mays High School and Douglas. We did Know Your Rights for the children, put together a panel for them because it's important for our young people to interact and engage safely with law enforcement. Cyberbullying, human trafficking, and teen suicide, which is at an all-time high. And God knows with this pandemic, how that will be affected, the depression and all of that. So those are the things I like to do when I'm off the bench. Oh, you know what? Consignment shops.
Oh, really?
I'm going to a consignment shop and finding something odd, you know, that nobody else has.
Yes. Awesome, awesome. you're saying a lot of things that I like. So I'm like, wow, I really need to connect with you outside of here. But back into the courtroom just briefly,
Sure.
how are people's trials being heard since the COVID thing?
We are now, I believe, on our second or third extension of the state of judicial emergency. Our courts are not going to be opening back up more fully until July 13th, unless there's another extension. And this is something that's put in place by the Chief Supreme Court Judge of Georgia, Justice Harold Melton. So what's been happening in the interim is that we have obeyed social distancing policies, which makes the line to get into the courthouse longer because everybody's standing 6 feet apart. The elevator can only hold 4 people at a time. People are getting their temperatures taken, which is standard. Masks are being distributed. You know, if you don't have one, you'll get one. And there are no jury trials until further notice. And judges are encouraged to handle most of their cases by Zoom, which they've been doing. They've been keeping a lot of the jail cases moving naturally by Zoom, because we just can't ignore the fact that people are incarcerated. We have a pandemic and we just leave them there until we figure it out. We've got to make sure that their due process rights are not being trampled on. And so the judges are working hard through Zoom. Where they can agree to have civil conferences by Zoom for the non-criminal matters, I believe the judges are now integrating civil matters in that way, but still no jury trials at all, and limited numbers of people in the courthouse.
Interesting. And what is your website address, Facebook page, all the deets into finding out where you are, what you're doing in the community, and how we really need to support you?
I'll tell you what that is. MelyneeLeftridgeHarris.com. Let me spell that. Melynee is Melynee. Leftridge, like left hand, but Leftridge. Harris.com is my website. Melynee Leftridge Harris for Judge is my Facebook page. And we're on Instagram at Melynee for Judge.
All right, Ms. Chatman, I know you have a host of questions. I have to give honor to where it's due. Please have at it.
First, I want to thank you guys for allowing me to be on this Zoom to ask some questions. I do have some questions that we asked during our forum, and nobody have these but me and Daphne Jordan and the moderator of our forum. Again, I want to thank Mrs. Harris for participating, and I think that this election is very important. Seeing the climate that we're in right now, we need to get the right person in that seat, on that seat. We also need someone that can understand, and I hate to use this word, but I'm going to use this word, our people of color. So being that said, I'm going to ask a couple questions. I got them on my phone. The first question is there one case that has affected you the most as an attorney or as a judge if currently serving?
You know, there are a couple of cases. I'll talk to you about one of them. But and this is one of the smaller cases, but it highlights what we see a lot in court. So that's why I think it's important. We had a young man to come down to court, and he was accused of possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. And he had been offered a deal by the state to do a certain number of hours of community service. And then it was all going to be sort of done. some other smaller components, but that was the main thing, the community service. So we reset the case, Ms. Chatman, for him to come back to prove that he'd done his community service so that he could get this dismissal. I mean, it was going to be gone. It was just going to be great. But he'd come back and he would nickel and dime me with the community service. Come back, supposed to do 25 hours of community service, come back, do 12. We need 25 because that's what the agreement was. Come back again, do 5 more hours, not the whole 25. So the state was trying to twist it like, look, we gave him this great deal, we're going to dismiss it. But he's not doing his part. We want to, we want you to take further action. So what we decided to do in that case was to have him close the deal by coming down to court and sitting in my jury box and having his community service hours finished out, watching what was going on in court, and then discussing with me afterwards the importance of what he was watching so that we could seal the deal and he would get a benefit from seeing people who were actually in jail coming out and meeting different kinds of sentences than the one he was lucky to be offered by the state. And those kinds of things I think are very impactful when we talk about creative ways to administer justice and have a person have a chance to go forward without a conviction on their record.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The next question. If you were a judge in a civil case and it had more restrictions on what the case, when the case go to trial, is there a need for a more mandatory mediation or settlement in the efforts of that trial?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, Ms. Chatman, I think you're asking me if mediation is something that I would be open to as a way of resolving a case than the standard way. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. You can't really force people to settle.
Mm-hmm.
You can encourage settlement by mediation or some other form of settlement. Y'all go out in the hallway and talk about this case and come back and see if you make a deal. But if you need to send them to mediation, it's an option that a judge has. The benefits of mediation, Ms. Chatman, is that everybody is usually happy or equally unhappy with the result, but they had a say in it. Mm-hmm. They participated in it. There is predictability in what the result is because they made it, as opposed to a jury trial. You don't really know what a jury of 12 is going to do. They surprise us all the time. Mm-hmm. And it encourages the spirit of working together as members of the bar, as lawyers, as parties to a case in effectuating it or making an outcome. So I like mediation. I also like mediation because while I am handling a jury trial, there's another case that's potentially being worked out that I haven't had to touch. So I may leave that day with a jury trial disposed of and another case on my docket that's resolved. So when we're talking about courtroom efficiency and moving the docket, it's good to send cases to mediation for those who are willing to do it.
Okay, well, that was the next question I was going to ask you. If elected as a Superior Court judge, how would you move these cases forward? Because it's been noted that you got cases that's been sitting back there for 2 or 3, maybe even 4 or 5 years, and the judge had, every time it come up, it's at a standstill. So what would you do with these cases? Because I'm quite sure some people behind the bar, jail is not, probably isn't guilty, but they got to sit there until the judge hears this case. So
Okay.
what would you do to move that
I'm
on?
To your question, but before I answer, so there's a fly in here. Before I answer the question, I want to say, when you say it's been noted that you don't mean me.
No,
You're talking about some other judges. I
Yes,
just
other
for the
judges.
sake of clarity, okay?
Yeah, not you, not you, not you.
But to your point, it is important that we move these cases through. We have a backlog. It is growing because of COVID. What I plan to do as our next Superior Court judge is to ensure that we have tight case management orders in place, that we stick to the deadline in those case management orders. And if that means that you stay late or you come early, you meaning me, the judge, and then that's what I'm going to do to make sure that we stay on task. We need to have a judge in that seat as our next Superior Court judge that knows how to prioritize cases, knows which cases need to be lined up to be handled first before we move on to the other cases and what those look like. We need a judge in that spot that knows that where there are consent orders, that means where people are agreeing on what they want and it looks reasonable, we need to sign off on those and let those cases flow. They are low-hanging fruit. We need to continue this technological wave that we've been forced into by this pandemic and improve upon it. And have these Zoom hearings, schedule these teleconferences. Let's not make parties and lawyers come down to court for no reason and pay the parking and all of those things that come into hauling your stuff into court. Let's minimize the inconvenience for the public and the lawyers in moving these cases by continuing to advance in our technological wheel that we're in now. We need to understand that as much as we need to move these cases, Ms. Chatman, through our court system, we need to make sure that we're doing it safely. And we are on uptick now, as we've seen with COVID. And so we must not rush to bring in people and jeopardize the lives of people for the sake of moving the cases. So we just have to do it creatively.
Okay, I got a couple more questions. The
Yes.
next question is, what are the biggest changes you think we need to make our judicial system and your vision for the future of our justice system?
Okay, let me write down the second question. Okay. The first question, the biggest change I would like to see, if possible, is this. In the rocket docket area that I am, as I'm working as a Superior Court judge by designation, meaning I'm wearing their hat, and honored to do so. I see a gap, Ms. Chatman, between the people who qualify for public defender services and the people who are able to afford a private lawyer. There's a case in here of people who simply cannot afford a private attorney, but they have leaped over the highest standard of who's allowed to have a public defender. And so routinely I will see people who are left with not having any legal representation because they fall into the gap. And I don't know if what we need to look at as a community is it raising the ceiling for those people who qualify for public defender services, or is it expanding Atlanta Volunteer Lawyers Foundations or these great organizations that provide legal assistance to have more people involved volunteering their time? I'm not quite so sure what the solve is, but I definitely know that that's an issue that impacts justice. Another issue that impacts justice is not having enough services to address people who are suffering from mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and homelessness. Because we know those are the root of a lot of our criminal activity. If we had enough services and resources to address the root, then we wouldn't have to deal with the injustice of people coming in front of us and potentially being charged or sentenced when they have these underlying problems. And so my vision is to continue to do the work that I've done on the bench in meeting out all of these different variables and doing it in a way that people feel served by the interaction. They may not like the ruling all the time, but they know that they were heard. They know that their family members were heard, all the witnesses were heard, and that I deeply considered what the variables were before offering a just result, as I believe it to be.
Okay, thanks. Okay, next question. Which is more important to becoming a judge, the number of cases you have handled as an attorney or the type of cases you handle?
I remember that question from the forum. And I thought it was a trick question, Ms. Chatman. I thought it was a trick question. And the reason why I thought it was a trick question was because those things to me are both important. And so that's how I respond to that. The type of cases that come in front of you give you the wealth of experience in handling different areas of the law, put you in the best position to be a knowledgeable judge when you get on the bench. So that's why that is important. The number of cases handled is important because it shows that if you can handle a big number of cases and do it well, that you are good at case management. You can be good at case management. You can be good at case management as a lawyer, and you can transfer that skill into being a good case manager as a judge. I'm in a rocket docket, as I said, and that means that the cases that I hear by designation as a Superior Court judge are cases that are supposed to be resolved, Ms. Chatman, within a 9-week period. So we need to be able to have a judge on the bench that can move those cases through and do it without compromising fairness and justice.
Okay. I'm going to ask 2 more questions, and that's going to be that on this. And I don't remember the questions that I asked on that panel, but I'm going to go through. Who were your role models in the judicial system?
I have a number of role models in the judicial system. My role models are Kimberly Esmond Adams, because I think that she moves her cases very, very well through the system. I think that she does a great job of that. Judge Patsy Porter, who meets everybody that comes to court with a smile on her face and is extraordinarily wise in her years of being a judge and being a lawyer. And Judge Ed Johnson, who was the judge that I first worked for right out of law school. He was a Superior Court judge and I was his staff attorney before I went with him to the Court of Appeals and worked with him there, Ms. Chatman.
Okay.
And he taught me a lot about being a judge and being a good judge and being fair.
Okay. And as a judge, is there anyone who can tell you what to do, or do you have a boss?
Yes, I have a boss. The boss is the community. All right. That's my boss. As our next Superior Court judge, it will be the people that elect me to that post. And it's the people that I will serve. And so the people are the boss of all elected officials, be they judges or in the legislature or whomever they are. So that's my boss.
Okay. Okay, now this is the last one. If elected to the position that you seek, what is the minimum number of years you intend to serve before seeking a higher level post?
Ms. Chatman, I've always wanted to be a trial court judge. Ever since my 3rd year of law school and taking my first job on the trial court, it is the pinnacle of service to me as far as what I'd like to do in this lifetime. It is the end for me. It is what I want to do. There are higher judicial posts. There are Court of Appeals. There's Supreme Court. I've worked in the Georgia Court of Appeals, and they have a very, very different job and a very challenging job. But one of the biggest differences between working as an appeals judge and working as a trial court judge is that you don't interact with members of the public in the same way as you do as a trial court judge. You can hear a pin drop at the Court of Appeals. It's quiet, it's studious, and people are researching and writing. But on the trial court level, you're interacting with jurors, witnesses, defendants, lawyers, court staff, people who come and just court watch. And I'm a people person. So there is no number of years. I would love to serve our communities as a Fulton County Superior Court judge until the wheels fall off.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I heard you, and if elected, I'm gonna hold you to that. I don't want you to get in there August 11th and tell me December 11th, well, I think I'm finna go to Supreme Court, because I'm gonna hold you to that. You say that's what you love to do. Because see, sometimes what happens is people get in these positions, and if they think the grass is greener, they might serve a year, some serve less than a year. And then they're on to the next thing. What I don't want is, and I don't believe that you would do this, and that's when you're putting everything out there. I just don't believe you would jump ship, because right now we're in a critical stage. We ain't got time to be jumping ship. You can see what's happening now. We in this thing for a long haul to make it better. So again, thank you for taking the time out to answer the questions that I gave you. Thank you. Back to
Thank you, Ms. Chatman. Thank you for the opportunity to answer your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Trina.
All right. We have just about 15 minutes left of this dynamic show. It went so fast, but it's easy to talk with you, Judge Harris. So again, thank you for being a part of the show. You mentioned a couple of key words for me during your communication or your conversation with Ms. Chatman. One of the things is you mentioned the word heard. I'm kind of zeroed in on that word, especially during this pandemic time. A lot of people are frustrated, angry, just on the personal level, not withstanding those other social issues out in play. But a lot of people personally are arguing and getting angry at one another. Crimes are still being committed. And a lot of it has to do with people wanting to be heard. So what is your take on that?
Thank you for that. There is a lot going on right now. There is a lot of upheaval. There is a lot of frustration and anger, and it's all blanketed under this COVID pandemic that we have. So we have this perfect storm happening here. It is backdropped against the thought that I've been having. I think many of us have had, that this is 2020, and people were calling this, students were calling this, I'm gonna graduate in the year of perfect vision. I'm gonna graduate in the year of perfect vision. And that's what they were saying 4 years ago. And I thought it was a cute little slogan for the college students and the high school students to say that they were graduating in the year of perfect vision. But isn't it ironic that here we are in 2020, and indeed our eyes, many people's eyes, have been opened in a way that we never thought 7 months ago that we would be. And so when we talk about the opportunity to be heard, we are talking about the conversations that are happening quiet, some of them, quiet conversations in chat rooms, in virtual water coolers, in Bible studies, and in different places all around this country and the world. And then we're also talking about to be heard in the louder forms with protesting and pray testing and all of those conversations, the small ones and the large ones, have meaning, and they're going to help us to move the needle forward. And so for my small part in this, as a judge on the bench, it is important that when people want to speak out in court about what is happening in a particular case, that they are heard by me as the judge, and that they leave saying, I felt like I had a fair shot in there. She didn't say, no, sir, I don't want to, I'm sorry, that's not important. Or she didn't cut me off. She let me speak so that I could get it out, and I could feel like she was paying attention when I spoke. And she heard, because you know, you can hear somebody, you can be on your phone, you can be on the computer. People need to know that you're connecting with them and that you are understanding the communication. And being heard is the first step in a communication that's going to bring about some kind of resolution. So that's how I would answer your question.
Oh, thank you for that. Also, it requires everyone in their own right to learn how to listen and not approach a conversation with a preconceived notion, if you will.
That's right.
In order for that effective communication to take place. How hard do you find that the people that come before you in the courtroom are able to articulate all that they intend so that they can get a closer to desired outcome?
I think it's person to person. Some people are struggling with communication because they are either challenged by some of the other variables that we talked about, mental health issues or substance abuse issues, and others do better in communicating. The benefit of having a lawyer assists with that when we're talking about the criminal cases, because they become part of your mouthpiece. They help you get your message across. But I think it's important to have judges on the bench who can see that this is where the challenge is. And if we need to call everybody up to the bench and say, look, he's trying to tell me, or she's trying to convey something, and there's more to it, I can look and see that their eyebrows are furrowed up, or they look frustrated in their face. And you, Mr. Lawyer, are standing next to your client, so you don't see what I'm seeing, but they look confused. Let's talk about unconfusing the situation so that the message can get to you and get to me. And that's sometimes the benefit of, like I said, of sitting across from someone and standing next to them, is that you can pick up on nuances from people about where their head is at and try to enrich the conversation so that what is being said gets all the way out for those who are more challenged in getting the message out.
Excellent. Never thought about that, looking at the person as opposed to being next to them. Now, what do you recommend that the public can do in regards to, you spoke about citizens not being, or let me say, to have their cases mediated? Is this a idea that they need to come to court with? Do you suggest that, or are there any preliminary steps they can take before they get to your courtroom in regards to?
Thank you for the question, Reverend. It depends on the calendar. Some calendars, there are mediators present and we send cases straight to mediation. For example, the way we used to do the landlord-tenant calendar. There are mediations on hand and we almost immediately send everybody to mediation to try to work those out, because we're dealing with their homes, and because it seems that the law is the Georgia law is actually more favorable to landlords than tenants. It is better if they can come to an agreement than to bring the case to court, because what all as human beings like is for people to stay where they live. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what we want for people. So mediation helps the communication between those two parties. So that's an example there. In a criminal case, mediation is really the discussion between the state prosecutors and the lawyer for the defendant in the back room. And it's not a mediation with a third party neutral there, but it's settlement discussions. They just are about a criminal case. And those help to resolve cases where there can be an agreement if the judge accepts what's been agreed to. In regular civil cases, a good judge will go through the file and everything that's been filed in the case and make a decision about whether or not it's a suggestion that the judge wants to make. This looks like a great case for mediation, lawyer one, lawyer two, and this is the reason why I think it might be. Have you all considered that? You want me to reset it for 2 weeks and allow you to set one of those up? Is there would you like to do it through the free program that we have at the county? Let's have a discussion about whether or not this is a good way to resolve this case and make a suggestion in those cases.
I like how Ms. Chatman brought out the gap piece between the people being able to afford adequate representation as opposed to those who cannot. And then you talked about maybe the bar needs to be raised to be more inclusive of those who cannot afford to buy an attorney, or let me say, secure their services, and being able to be eligible to get a public defender. Is there anything that the public can do to help facilitate that process of getting that bar raised? Because I find a lot of people are, like you said, they are incarcerated, not necessarily because they did something wrong, but they're still there because they couldn't get the right type of service.
Well, let me say this to that last point, if I could, Reverend McClure, that a lot of the cases that I'm talking about that are falling in the gap are not jail cases, but bond cases. These are that are out, but they fall within the gap. And I'm not quite so sure what the solve is. It's a matter of money. You know, it's a resources issue, like so many things that we're always dealing with. Where are we allocating resources? And that is not something that I can influence in the way that other necessary parties in politics can influence as a judge. But what I can do is say, we have a need. We have a need down here for some help in this gap. What can those who are in the position to allocate proper funds to different programs, what can you all do to assist us in this gap? And begin the conversation just by saying there's a need. There's a need. Come and let's talk about how we can get this resolved. Maybe you all can do something about that.
Awesome.
Again, it is.
Just summarizing the whole show today, I felt an elation within my spirit. It was similar to how I felt when President Obama was elected the first time, and then another judge we had on Church Biz a few weeks ago, she was elected to her desired post. So I assume that this is a ministry for you and not just a job.
Absolutely. I absolutely love serving the public in this way. When I get on the bench, Reverend McClure, I get on the bench with a smile on my face, because we're going to start off like that. Good morning, good afternoon, because I'm here to serve, and I enjoy doing it. So yes, indeed, most certainly it is a ministry. It is a ministry. It is a calling. I love it.
Praise the Lord. And then can you remind us of how everybody can follow you again on social media?
Sure, I'd be delighted to. My webpage, first of all, my website is MelyneeLeftridgeHarris.com, MELYNEE, Leftridge, LEFTRIDGE, Harris.com. My Facebook page is Melynee Leftridge Harris for Judge. And on Instagram, we're Melynee for Judge. I appreciate this opportunity so much, Reverend Penny Rogers, Reverend McClure, Ms. Chatman. I mean, it's been an outstanding opportunity to not only to speak with potential voters, but to talk with the three of you. I feel very much like it's a conversation amongst friends, and I appreciate it a great deal.
Judge Harris, could you remind us of the voting days,
Sure.
the start of early voting?
Yes. Early voting starts July 20th and ends on August 7th. That's a Friday. Election date is August 11th. And those are the pertinent dates.
Okay, thank you. And what I'll do, I'll get that Saturday, or will they be having an early Saturday? But I'll make sure that Pastor Penny, the radio station, get that date. Again, I want to say thank you all for doing a great job. I'm with Trina. And so we're going to make sure that the votes get out there, and pray that we don't have to go through what we went through a couple months ago at the election. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Church Biz. We do so appreciate your time with us on today with Judge Melynee Leftridge Harris and Miss Damita Chatman, two powerful women in the Atlanta area. Connect with them on social media, Google them if you have to, but they are approachable and they will communicate with you the best way that they know how, in order to help you on towards your next level. And again, this is Patrina McClure at WCEG Network, host of Church Biz. We do appreciate you and ask that you stay blessed until our next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.